Hey, what's going on, guys? So in this video, I want to talk a little bit about looking at viruses and different variants of viruses and sort of how to interpret information when it comes to transmissibility, how deadly a virus is, and whether or not that information that's coming in, what does it mean exactly? Does transmissibility mean that necessarily it's a good or bad thing? Well, of course, transmissibility is a bad thing. But when we hear about Omicron is less deadly, does that make it a good thing, right? So when we're talking about populations, just quickly, when we're looking at about an individual, yes, transmissibility is a bad thing. Yes, something being more deadly, virulent, is bad, right? But taking those things into account, like high transmissibility but less deadly, is that something we should be concerned with? So just sort of I have these high-level details that are produced from these two studies, which are just two studies, I believe. I don't know if this is the South Africa, but at least one I thought was an Irish study and a UK study by these two authors at the bottom left. Link will be in the description. And this just goes to show that we sort of have a general idea that the transmissibility of Omicron is much higher. That is to say, the likelihood to reinfect compared to Delta is 10 times more. But at the same time, the rate of Omicron hospitalization versus Delta is something between a third and a half. So about 33% to a half less likely than Delta. So again, the transmissibility is clearly not a good thing. The less deadly is a good thing, right? So overall, does this mean that Omicron is a better variant? I'm not saying from a public health perspective if it is or isn't, right? But looking at the population numbers, and sort of if we were to do modeling, what would that mean? So here I sort of have a depiction, a little bit of illustration, just to show that if I had a population of 100 that recovered, what would it mean if this same population contracted 100% of the Omicron variant and 100% contracted the Delta variant? So let's just start at the bottom, because this is something that's we're more familiar with in terms of the Delta. So 100 people have recovered, which means to say that 100 people have had the infection. Whether or not they had the vaccination doesn't matter for this illustration, but they contract Delta, and a certain percentage of them become reinfected. Again, and that's because our vaccines are effective to a certain percentage, right? And there is very little vaccine escape when it comes to infectivity with Delta from our previous forms of vaccines at the time of me creating this video. So if we were to assume that 8 were reinfected, well, because Delta is, let's just say, more virulent than Omicron, well, let's just say out of those 8, 6 get hospitalized. So 75% get hospitalized, which is not the true number, but just for the sake of simplicity, everything still computes normally, even if you had the real numbers. So I just wanted for everybody to view it from a different perspective. Even if this was 12%, which I think is much closer, so 12 people, the hospitalization is about 12%, but it's even lower if you've had the vaccine or you've been reinfected. Again, just the point is that 75% become hospitalized in this case, because again, Delta is more infectious, more deadly. Sorry, not more infectious, more deadly. So let's take the same population and had them infected with Omicron. Again, 100 are infected with Omicron. Now, not all of them are going to be reinfected, but again, about 10 times more likely than Delta to become reinfected. So if 8 were reinfected in this population, and again, it doesn't matter if they're vaccinated or not. Let's just say a small subset of a population with whatever sort of conditions, vaccine rates, whatever, was infected. A 10 times rate means that for every 8 reinfected with Delta, 80 would have been reinfected in this other population, again, with the same sort of baselines and conditions. Now, even though Omicron would be less deadly, so instead of infecting 75% of those infected, let's just say only 25% of those 80 were hospitalized, again, because Omicron is 1/3 to 1/2 less deadly than Delta, right, as a percentage term. What does this mean in the end in Omicron? Well, we still have 20 hospitalized. In the end, looking at these sort of end populations here, in terms of just hospitalizations, we actually get approximately, but a little less, 4 times more hospitalizations, just because of the rate of transmissibility of Omicron is so much higher and the vaccine escape of Omicron is so much higher than Delta. We just have a larger body to account for, to look at. So therefore, even though the percentage of those getting hospitalized is lower, because we have a larger body of people infected, we have more hospitalized. So that's why following the Omicron strain, there might have been some good news out of South Africa about the number of people on additional oxygen was much lower than the Delta strains. But when it comes to looking at just hospitalization rates and those needing hospitalization, hospitalizations in the States, whether it be New York State, in Canada, and the United States more broadly, in children and adults, still increased regardless, right? So again, maybe that doesn't say too much about the rate of ICU and the rate of being on oxygen, but this just goes to show that you can still have hospitalizations and hospitals overrun, even with a less deadly strain because of the high transmissibility and the number of people that are becoming reinfected or infected for the first time. So with that, I thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.